Hey, Sarah once literally did the same thing the other way around, so that's fair. I wasn't talking to you.
Hey,
Did you? What? Hey, she got pissed off. Hey, Siri. I'm sorry about the thing I said that one time.
it's okay.
She sounded happier too. Hello there, heroes. I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to another Power Ranger Super Ninja Steel episode review. The sand in the hourglass that is this show is getting pretty low, and it's been on a real run of stinkers lately. Can this show pull out of its nosedive before the season comes to an end? Let's see if the 16th episode, Car Trouble, helped any. Weirdly enough, we start this episode off with the monster, this weird-looking spark plug millipede thing that's actually pretty cool. It declares that it needs to absorb energy, sees a car, says that the car has a battery in it, and the battery has electricity. Meanwhile, Victor and Monty are exercising nearby, Victor pulling Monty in a rickshaw, while Monty monitors his biorhythm patterns, whatever that means. Monty declares that Victor has only reached 50%, whatever that means. Distracted by this, Victor runs directly into the monster's charging beam, getting some of the energy transferred into his body instead of, frying him like an egg. The monster is annoyed by this, declaring that he needs to find more energy, and leaves. And Victor gets superpowers from this. No, I'm serious. Monty declares that his whatever it was levels are now over 1,000%, and Victor says that it feels even higher. Okay, I've got to do it.
It's over 9,000! What, 9,000?
Victor touches Monty and zaps him with electricity. He says, not even the Power Rangers can do that. Levi can. Stormstar? Do the writers even remember their powers? Anyway, they immediately start thinking of ways they can exploit that, because every script for the show contains the sentence, Victor and Monty start looking for ways to exploit this. Calvin has apparently forgotten that he has a truck and a driver's license, walking to school for some reason, when he comes across a woman having car trouble!
Roll credits.
He offers his help, but she says that she's already called a mechanic. But Calvin just can't resist a nice exposed engine and asks if he can take a look anyway. Why, sure, obvious high schooler that might not know a darn thing about cars. You can go in and mess around with my already broken engine. You just go for it. Calvin lifts one flap on the car and instantly diagnoses 3 problems with it. The third being echoed by the professional mechanic who shows up. This mechanic, Joe of Joe's Towing, is a little too impressed with Calvin's knowledge. I mean, sure, Calvin knows more about cars than I do, a lot more, but he says that this one diagnosis made him think that Calvin wasn't a student, but a professional mechanic. And despite finding out that Calvin is in high school, he offers Calvin a job. Calvin heads to school and tells the Rangers the story, revealing that he has accepted the offer, showing off his snazzy new mechanic uniform, and says he's going to be working at Joe's full-time. Full-time? But what about school? Calvin reveals that he's dropping out. The Rangers are surprised by this, and actually this was a really nice character scene, especially for Calvin, as he says that this has always been his dream, and that everybody knows that he's really not all that good at school. The Rangers try to convince him to stay in school, but he says that his mind is made up. He says he has to go after he gets a text from Joe saying that, weirdly, a lot of cars seem to be broken down today. Huh. That line was actually a nice subtle reference to the fact that the monster is probably still bouncing around Summer Cove, draining car batteries. But you know, I'm just not sure everybody in the audience picked up on it. So let's have it immediately repeated with Joe mentioning to Calvin that it's weird how many cars are having electrical issues today.
Do you understand?
Calvin and Joe show up to a parking lot where like 5 people are waiting for them. Seriously, 5 people called the same mechanic, especially when their cars were right next to each other, so they know they were calling the same. Alright, anyway. Calvin is not nervous about this, but excited. He's finally living his dream. Joe laughs a little at this, which I took as a nice, funny little hint at the idea that while it's a totally cool and legitimate dream, don't get me wrong, maybe being a mechanic isn't as glamorous as Calvin thinks it's going to be. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Calvin comes running up to ninja training late because work was so busy. But as Haley points out, he's happy. Calvin does mention that it is weird that so many cars on that day all had the same electrical problems. When he tells Mick that no, that's not a common problem for Earth cars to have, Mick gets the sense that this is a pattern, and patterns usually point at something. Calvin just starts training with the others, but Mick can't shake the feeling and leaves to check on something. And suddenly, it's tomorrow. We don't even get any kind of night-to-day transition, just an overhead shot of the city, and then Calvin says good morning to Joe. Joe is working on yet another car that's having electrical problems. Calvin asks him if he thinks it's weird that all of these cars are having the same electrical problems. I mean, this could be something that could lead to a national recall. Is it a certain specific type of model? Is it the same type of battery in all of these cars? Reflecting the differences between the two, Joe doesn't really care, just saying his job is to fix the cars. However, that mystery is then immediately solved as the monster shows up and starts draining one of Joe's trucks. Boy, that sure is convenient, huh? I love how Joe tells Calvin to run, and Cal's response is basically, "Oh, great, a monster." He watches what the monster is doing for a moment before the show misses yet another opportunity to give us a solo morphing sequence for one of the Rangers. Seriously, Ninja Steel, just Preston? The two of them fight, and by that I mean the monster just zapping at Calvin, who dodges, and for some reason instantly freaks out about how strong this monster is. He calls the other Rangers in a panic, not only asking them to come help, but to bring heavy firepower, because this monster is so strong. And boy oh boy did they, as Calvin undermines his own point by not only holding off the monster, but not even getting hit and knocking the monster back. Brody shows up in the Lion Fire Zord. Overkill much? Geez, we just established that this season is in the same universe as Zordon, and they just take one of his rules, escalation, and just toss it right off a cliff. Brody blasts the monster, who, despite being small and getting blasted by their most powerful Zord, is not destroyed, just knocked back a bit. And then it blasts back at the Zord and damages it, forcing it to crash and Brody to eject. The Rangers show no real concern that their Zord could, smash into a populated area and kill thousands of people. One line, really just part of one line. I've programmed the Zord to crash near the mountains. Now I've got to eject. The monster is out of power from having zapped a Zord, so it retreats. Mick immediately picks up weird energy readings near the school that he can't place. Haley wants the Rangers to go investigate immediately, since Voltipede could be draining energy from the school. However, there's also the matter of the damaged Lion Zord. Calvin points out that if the Lion Zord blasted the monster at full power, that might do the trick. I am at an absolute loss as to why Brody would have blasted the monster with anything less than full power. Anyway, Mick to go and fix the damaged Lion Zord while the Rangers investigate the school. Everybody's on board with this plan, except for Calvin, who feels the power emanating from his mechanic shirt and offers to go fix the Zord himself. Mick doesn't really think he'll understand the alien technology, but Calvin begs him for the chance to go do it. Mick agrees for some reason, not even offering to go with him.
I don't think that's a good idea.
I actually had a better reason that Calvin shouldn't have been allowed this opportunity. Hey Cal, you said yourself that this monster is really, really strong. Maybe you're gonna need all 6 Rangers at the rematch. Anyway, Calvin grabs his bag of Earth mechanic tools, because I'm sure those are gonna help in an alien Zord, and heads on over there, heading into the cockpit and then dropping down into the guts of the Zord. By the way, I always love getting to see the inside of a Zord. Just makes it feel so much more real. Calvin looks around the Zord in utter confusion for about 2 seconds and then calls Mick, giving up. Really? Maybe just move a flap. That seemed to work on the car from earlier. We don't even get to see what Calvin's looking at. He just looks around. We don't see anything really complicated. And then it's just, "No, I give up, Mick, help me." Mick leaps down from a higher catwalk, already being in the Zord, because clearly he knew this was going to happen and just showed up anyway. He tries to protect Calvin's ego by saying that he was just passing by before he gets to work, as he drops his technical jargon all over the floor.
Now, you do know what a bilateral collateral is.
Well, of course I do, human. I am not stupid.
Calvin asks him how he learned to work on spaceships. Mick stops, gets a very serious look on his face, walks over to Calvin and says, "It's because he stayed in school and stuck with it until he graduated." The two of them get to work on the Zord. We cut over to the school where the show uses a toy that it kinda likes lately, a location transition. The Rangers walk in and see that everything is okay, and then Brody rather loudly announces that they should head to the base. And funny enough, it turns out he was standing right near a secret agent. Yes, we don't actually follow the Rangers to the base, but pivot over to Victor and Monty, who are also walking in. Monty is confused that he's posted a video of Victor using his new electrical superpowers, but that video was deleted. As if 1,500 people didn't view the video before that, some of them downloading it, right? Anyway, the video was deleted by the aforementioned secret agent, 00 Sven. Not 007, though Monty's reaction would imply that James Bond exists in this universe, at least as a work of fiction. 00 Sven. He's Swedish. I don't know, I once had another weird guy tell me that he was from a foreign country, and I didn't really believe it then either.
We come from France.
But we are American citizens now.
Anyway, just like with Bulk and Skull that one time, because that's where we're at with Victor and Monty at this point, just literally rehashing Bulk and Skull's storylines, he needs the two of them, well, just Victor, really, for a top-secret mission that involves generating an amazing amount of electricity. Let me try to predict what'll happen here. It's going to either involve powering something incredibly ridiculous, like a massive hairdryer for the president, or it'll involve his powers cutting out at just the wrong time. Let's see. Anyway, this agent requires proof that Victor actually has these superpowers. Victor walks up to a janitor who for all the world looked like another secret agent in disguise, though they never came back to that, grabs their floor waxer, and overcharges it, and it sends him directly into the ceiling.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
We get a quick monster scene right before a commercial as Voltipede finally finds the city's main power plant, not sure what took it so long, and starts sucking it dry. Meanwhile, at the base, the Rangers are having a lot of trouble tracking down Voltipede or figuring out what he's doing. As someone pointed out to me on Twitter, shouldn't Voltipede have had a buzz cam pointed at him? And shouldn't the Rangers have been able to track the buzz cams like they have all year? Calvin and Mick get back to the base, and Calvin declares that the Lion Zord is good to go. The others congratulate Calvin, saying that he really is a great mechanic. But he very humbly says it's Mick that deserves all the credit, and he still has a lot to learn. That's when they detect the power drain, as Redbot reports that the entire city has lost power. Sarah asks if he's sure, and then the entire base loses power. So yeah, he's pretty sure. I actually thought it was pretty funny. The Rangers head out, though I was left wondering why none of the lights and computers were starting to come back on in the base. They do have backup generators for the base that has the computers that helps the Power Rangers operate. Right? Right? The Rangers head for the power plant, but Voltipede catches them over by the arena. Brody fires off yet another one of his badass one-liners that really just makes me wish he would shut up and the team would morph already. But then that's what happens, so hey. Brody pulls out the fusion star. Haven't seen that in a while. But Voltipede zaps it, and then the Rangers. We see the star rattle to the ground and settle behind them. Voltipede calls down some Basher bots, and Levi tells the other Rangers that he's not in this Sentai footage, so he better take care of them by himself. And he does, in a single shot. Meanwhile, the Rangers decide to take care of the monster by combining their powers, by firing at the same spot in the sky to blast down an energy attack on him.
Whatever it takes.
Calvin then asks Brody if he can use the Lion Firestar. I don't know. The Prism had to tell them that Levi could do it. Is this actually going to work? Who am I kidding? Of course it works. And then this show, who has a core fundamental value of teamwork, once again has one of the Rangers doing all of the work himself as Calvin blasts the monster all around everywhere and then finishes him off with actually a pretty visually impressive swirling slash attack. The Rangers just head on off and the fusion star remains sitting on the ground for some reason. Besides the fact that I would think Brody, at the very least, would remember to pick the thing up, I kind of figured it would just fade back into the hammer space or something. Instead, Tynamon, who we have literally not seen since he was introduced, shows up, finds the star, takes it, and leaves. I mean, hey, Sarah once did that literally the other way around, so fair game, right? The audience just votes to Gigantify, and then Cosmo just says, "Time for round 2! I would almost lay money that we will see this scene used again before the end of the season. The Rangers summon their Blaze Zords and form the Megazord. Voltipede says it's time to reveal his true power! The ability to control the weather, apparently, as it gets cloudy. The Rangers have the upper hand at first, but then Voltipede extends his body and wraps the Megazord up, which makes it unable to move. By the by, the Rangers stagger around in the cockpit with their arms tightly at their sides, like they're wrapped up as well, and this is something that I actually really hate, as nitpicky as it sounds. I understand that the Rangers control the Megazord with body movements, but they're not physically wrapped up. They can still move their arms. It's the Megazord that can't move. Calvin does now what I thought he should have done from the very beginning, summoning the Lion Fire Zord. It zaps the monster, who retracts. Then, the Lion Fire Zord flies away, Calvin even thanking it as he says bye. Chesty shoot finisher, and as for the monster, the comedy wrap-up was almost good this week. Almost. So freaking close. Victor's first mission for this secret agent dude is to grab this giant comedy electric transformer that's sitting on the ground because of Shut Up and restoring electricity to all of Summer Cove. That's right. Just because the monster was destroyed doesn't mean that the power that it consumed and used came right back. It has to be restored. Of course, it's a moot point anyway, because electricity is something that's generated, more would just be created, but this gives Victor the chance to be a hero. And he does so. Yes, Victor grabs on to this electric transformer and restores all the power to Summer Cove. We're talking about things like Hospitals, shelters, Victor literally just saved lives. But worry not, my Andor prediction from earlier was right on the money. What he electrified was important, even though the Transformer was kind of comedically and stupidly large and not really sitting where it's supposed to. But anyway, doing so zapped Victor of all of his electricity. He asks Sven if he still gets to be a secret agent. Sven's response is, "Hey, look over there!" and he runs off. Besides that being an incredibly unprofessional reaction for a secret agent, this is a high school kid, just tell him no! The gag reminded me of when freaking Loki, yes seriously, did that on Operation Overdrive and... Wait a second. Loki? Computer. Analyze episodes It's Hammer Time from Operation Overdrive and Car Trouble from Super Ninja Steel and report any correlations.
Analyzing. Character Loki portrayed by actor Adam Gardner. Character Agent 00 Sven portrayed by actor Adam Gardner.
Interesting. The joke was still stupid, but I kind of see what they were going for there. So believe it or not, we're not done yet. After the comedy wrap-up, we got the moral wrap-up. And hoo-hoo, boy, it's a doozy this week. So the Rangers are hanging out in that outside the shop area, apparently before school, as we're about to see, while Levi plays nothing in particular on his guitar. Joe shows up to pick up Calvin for work? He notices that Calvin's not wearing his uniform and asks him what's going on. Calvin quits his job on the spot, saying he wants to stay in school even if it's tough for him. Joe says it's the right move, despite having hired him out of school in the first place, and thanks him for working with him. Believe it or not, we're not done yet! After the moral wrap-up, we get a villains wrap-up! This episode refuses to end! Odious is ranting about Voltipede having been useless when Tynamon comes in and reports that he did manage to knock the Ninja Fusion Star loose, which he now has. And it may be just because he's been gone so long, but I could swear that Tynamon has a different voice now. Anyway, Odious says with this in their grasp, victory will soon be theirs. Mwahaha! The Rangers won't be able to form a Megazord that they haven't used once this entire season. Surely victory shall soon be theirs. Surely stars shall soon be thrown. Episode 16, Car Trouble. Pros, a fairly strong character piece for Calvin, a cool looking and actually intimidating monster, and showcasing Mick's strengths. Cons, the moral is terribly mishandled, Calvin comes off looking like a moron, and wasting a chance at redemption for Victor. Believe it or not, I wanted to like this episode more than I actually did. Car Trouble gets 2 stars out of 5. For the shallow amounts of characterization we've gotten for the Power Rangers this season, this was actually a really deep and interesting character piece for Calvin. He admits to struggling with school, something that I'm sure a lot of people relate to, and he makes the difficult decision to quit school and pursue his dreams. That's a decision he has to defend to his friends, and he sticks to his guns. It was just really refreshing seeing one of the Rangers get some actual character meat to work with. Voltipede's name might have been a little silly. Call me crazy, but I've never been a huge fan of the whole portmanteau monster name of 2 different things that it is. Volt, electricity, and Ipede from millipede. However, Voltipede looked really cool. As silly as this might sound, it kind of reminded me of a household crafting project where you make stuff that looks like it comes from nature out of things you have around your house. He's a millipede made out of spark plugs. That was pretty cool, I dug it. And while this was clearly a Calvin focus episode, I liked how Mick had a chance to shine as well. Instead of just beating us over the head with the moral, although he still did that, and trust me, I'm getting to it, he demonstrated the moral through his knowledge and experience. That is how I prefer Mick to teach the moral. That being said, Anyone who has watched at least one after-school special knows that stay in school, kids, is one of the trickiest examples of the moral of the day to use in educational fiction. And this episode totally mishandled it. The first example of that was the other Rangers indicating to Calvin that he should stay in school so he can learn more things and become a better mechanic. I want to make my meaning very clear here because I respect the crud out of auto mechanics. I look under the hood of my car and it may as well be a nest of snakes for as much as I understand it. But high school education is not exactly what prepares you to be a mechanic. Yes, some high schools have shop classes. My high school didn't. And then there was Mick actually delivering that moral. Ooh. I tend to try and censor myself during these reviews, even bleeping myself during my bloopers. But sometimes the show makes it very difficult indeed. Hey Mick, you want to get all sanctimonious about Calvin dropping out of high school? Like I said, high school does not prepare you to be an auto mechanic. And now you have added the bonus multiplier that it definitely doesn't prepare you to be a spaceship mechanic. And it was all BS anyway. Hey Mick, you know what really made you so good at working on spaceships? Years of training and experience. The legs are totally cut off of this moral because it's not applied properly. And then they seem to realize that at the last minute, like these scripts are just literally written from beginning to end and just dealt with one scene at a time with no context flowing in between them. So when Calvin quits his job, it's no longer about the fact that he needs to learn more about cars, but that there's all sorts of things he needs to learn. And the cherry on top of everything was how Calvin ended up quitting the job. 1, why was his boss coming to pick him up for work? Calvin has a truck that's a main point of his character. He can drive to work himself. 2, why is his boss picking him up for work at school when he doesn't attend that school anymore? If Calvin's dropped out, isn't he technically trespassing? And then 3, worst of all, how about how incredibly unprofessional it was to let Calvin have his boss come and pick him up for work and go, oh yeah, I quit. Joe's all understanding about Calvin's desire to finish school, but again, Joe was the one who offered him a full-time job that took him away from school. And couldn't Calvin work at the shop part-time? I mean, obviously not, since he's also a Power Ranger, but Joe doesn't know that, so it was weird that he didn't offer. And I know this is one of those cons that some people are going to say is just a nitpick, but it really seriously just slammed the brakes on the episode for me. Calvin dropping into the Lion Zord, looking around for like literally 2 seconds, and then calling Mick in a panic. A pan-Mick, if you will. I do get that the Lion Zord is alien technology. I mean, heck, the Prism didn't even make it. It just modified Princess Viera's ship. But after begging Mick to get the chance to work on this Zord, Calvin doesn't even try to figure it out. I mean, the episode took pains to establish that Calvin was curious about what was causing all the electrical problems in the cars, while Joe just wanted to fix them. He sure didn't take any pains to figure out what was wrong with the Lion Zord. I understand that Calvin needed a humbling, feeling like Mr. Super Mechanic, like he knew everything. But seriously, just tweak this a little tiny bit and it works. Calvin drops into the Zord, looks around, and is instantly confused. He's shaken, maybe even thinks about calling Mick, but steadies himself. I am a professional mechanic. I can handle this. He starts working on a panel and, uh-oh, power core destabilized. Zord will explode in 30 seconds. Then Mick drops in, presses like 3 buttons on the panel, and fixes the problem. Calvin is amazed. How does Mick know about all this so well? Well, it turns out that Mick went to a special space trade school for fixing spaceships in the Lion Galaxy. He thought about dropping out once because it was really tough, but he saw it through to the end because he loved fixing spaceships so much and wanted to know all about them. Good Zordon, I went into this just trying to fix this scene, and I also fixed the moral of the day delivery. Hashtag still not a pro writer. And I'm really starting to hate when the show sets up Victor to do something good and successful and then brings him right back down just for comedic effect. Now, don't get me wrong, his character has done enough truly terrible things that it's reasonable that the writers think the audience wants to see him brought down several pegs. But it's just not funny anymore, if it ever was. Victor randomly gains superpowers during a monster attack. That's something that's actually believable to happen in this universe. He gets recruited to use those powers to save the city, restoring electricity and literally saving lives. And he successfully does so, but ends up sacrificing those powers in the process. So, this gets him honored by the mayor, right? He finally gets that 50th trophy? No, the secret agent just drives away and he's left chasing after the car like a moron. I'm tired of the show trying to make us care about Victor and then yanking it away and going, nope, just comedy. Ha 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 ha.
That's so funny.
I feel like I've said this a distressing number of times when it comes to Ninja Steel, but I feel like there was a really good story here, but this episode just couldn't get out of its own way. Stay in school can actually be a very interesting moral if you tell the right story. Though thinking about it, it does seem a little mature for the audience Ninja Steel's been aiming at. Does New Zealand deal with a lot of elementary school dropouts? But of course, Ninja Steel just doesn't seem to understand how actual human beings think, and the whole thing just ends up ruined. However, we did seem to end on a little hint of intrigue with the villains leading into the next episode. So, let's take a peek at the 17th episode of Super Ninja Steel, Happy to Be Me, an episode whose title will surely also be its moral. One of Madamodius's monsters seizes a ninja power star and attempts to steal Levi's voice to unlock its power. How would his voice help? Wait, getting ahead of myself. That's for next time. That's going to do it for this Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel episode review. Thank you, heroes, so much as always for watching. Make sure to like the video by clicking that like button right down below. In the comments below, let me know what you thought of this episode, as well as my review of it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to see all of my videos and ring that bell. Get your notifications set up so you can be notified whenever I post brand new videos, just like these Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel episode reviews. And if you really appreciate the work I do on this channel and like to toss me a little financial support, you can head over to digitaltipjar.com/orangerangervid, toss a little bit of tip change into my jar, and I appreciate anything that lands inside. Until next time, heroes, may the power protect you. This mechanic, Joe of Joe's Towing, I mean, sure, Calvin knows more about cars than I do, for example, but that line is actually a very nice, subtle reference to the fact that the monster is probably still bouncing around town, dragging like that. Calvin asks him if he thinks it's weird, what might be, before the show misses yet another opportunity to give the Ranger an instant morph. Wow, that was weird. He watches what the monster is doing for a second before the show gives us yet another missed opportunity to give a solo Ranger an instant, fart! As Calvin undermines his own point by not only, everybody's on board with this plan, they are, we get a quick monster scene before a commercial as the monster finally manages to... And then this show, who's one of their fundamental... Victor's first mission... So believe it or not, we're not done. After the moral... Oh, God. Levi... Da-da-da-da. 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 So, believe it or not, we're not done yet. After the comedy mama, victory shall surely soon be theirs. Stars will surely soon be thrown. I want to do that one more time. Victory shall surely, that's hard to say. Victory surely shall soon be, that's tough too. Surely victory shall soon be hers. Yeah, that's good. He demonstrated the moral through his knowledge and experience. That is how I prefer Milky Way. Anyone who has watched even a single after-school special knows that stay in school, kids, is one of the trickiest examples. The first example of that was the Rangers indicating to Calvin that he should stay in school so he should learn more Victor randomly gained superpowers during a monster attack. That's something that's actually believable to happen in believable? Victor randomly gains power. But the episode just couldn't get out of its own way. Stay in school is actually a good moral. It has a good potential.